Hey, what's going on, gang? Nate on the Stone here. Welcome back to my channel and to the 55th episode of the Rolling Stone. And boy, guys, so much happened this past week. Okay, so we've just got to dive right in and start. And we're starting off with a story that is very near and dear to my heart. Okay, if you've been around the channel, for a bit now, then you guys know that my background is in history. That's what I got, that's what I went to college for. I got my degrees in history. One reason why I am not a multimillionaire right now. So this story is very near and dear to me because I love history in general. I love American history in particular. And if your spider senses are tingling, talking about history and American history, and if you were thinking, oh boy, is he going to start talking about the 1619 Project again? You are a lucky winner. Give yourself a gold star, because yes, indeed, we are talking about the 1619 Project once again. Now, again, just as a refresher, I made a whole regular On the Stone video about the 1619 Project when it was first published, which was at the end of August, beginning of September last year. So I will link that in the cards. It should be right up there. But in case you don't want to stop this video and watch that whole video, or just in case you don't want to watch that whole video, let me just give a brief sum up of the 1619 Project. The 1619 Project is the brainchild of Nikole Hannah Jones, who works and writes at the New York Times. And the project specifically is a series of essays and other pieces of literature like poems that deal with slavery, okay? But it goes even deeper than that, because specifically, according to the project itself, the entire point of the 1619 Project is to quote-unquote reframe American history. And how it does that is by arguing that the real founding date of America, when America became America, it's not 1776 with the signing of the Declaration of Independence, it's 1619 when the first African slaves came to the United States, what was going to be the United States, because of course in 1619 we were still British colonies. So that is the premise of the 1619 Project. It also says that slavery and racism, they are the only two legitimate lenses through which you can actually see and study and understand American history. So, according to the project, everything, and I mean everything, can be traced back to slavery and or racism. So, for example, traffic jams, that can be linked back to slavery and racism. And one of the most, not bizarre, but one of the most outrageous claims of the project is that the American Revolution itself was motivated by slavery, particularly a desire by the American colonists to defend slavery. This claim is made in the project's inaugural essay written by the aforementioned leader, Nikole Hannah Jones, and she makes the case that because in the 1770s there was a movement on the part of the British government in London that could have been seen as threatening the legality of slavery in the British Empire, that is what prompted American colonists to basically throw in the towel and say, okay, we're done, we're not being British, we are going to become our own nation because, doggone it, we want to keep our slaves. That's the premise of the 1619 Project in a nutshell. Now, it is the 1619 Project that this past Monday just won a Pulitzer Prize. I'll repeat that. The 1619 Project, this past week on Monday, was awarded the Pulitzer Prize. The project and Nikole Hannah Jones. From the Pulitzer Prize's website, This is what it says. The prize for commentary goes to Nikole Hannah Jones of the New York Times. Why? Quote, for a sweeping, deeply reported, and personal essay for the groundbreaking 1619 Project, which seeks to place the enslavement of Africans at the center of America's story, prompting public conversation about the nation's founding and evolution. One big problem, and you guys already know this if you've been keeping up with the 1619 Project, the Washington Examiner, the Federalist, the Public Discourse, they've all had, National Review, they've all had several people writing several very good essays about the myriad problems about the 1619 Project. Or if you watched my video from August, then you kind of know why this is such a terrible, terrible event. And I don't mean that, and I don't say that lightly. I'm not being facetious like, oh my gosh, it's so terrible. No, I mean this seriously, guys. That this is a serious and deeply tragic event on a myriad of levels. We're going to get there. But just to briefly reiterate, again, in case you haven't read any of those essays, in case you didn't watch my video in August, the reason why it's so terrible that the 1619 Project won a Pulitzer Prize is because the 1619 Project is bunk. It's hogwash. It's a lie. It's, I don't want to say mythology because I have too much respect for actual mythology, but it's a fabrication. It's a lie. It's a hoodwink. It's a scam. I don't know how many other ways I can say it. It's a fraud. Nikole Hannah Jones gave us a fraud. If the 1619 Project had just been about different areas of American life that perhaps have been influenced by slavery, that have perhaps been influenced in the past by racism, that are not generally well known, well, okay, sure. My philosophy is that all genuine history, honest history, all genuine historical research is a boon to a society. You have to know your history. You have to know your roots. And you've got to know it, warts and all. You can't just perpetuate the good stuff and kind of sweep all the bad stuff underneath the rug. Reverse-wise, you can't just put out all the warts on the wall and get rid of all the gold and the silver and all the heroics that happened too. You have to have both. Not only just so that you can get an honest picture of what actually happened, but so that you're honest with yourself as well, and that you can actually grow from your own history, because that's one of the whole points of history, is by learning from the past. But that's not what the 1619 Project is. Let me illustrate this by going back to that example that I just gave, that Nikole Hannah Jones gave, that the revolution was fought for the preservation of history, of slavery. That's a lie. There is absolutely no historical evidence that that was ever the case. And you want to know why? Because the tabernacle, if you will, of abolitionist sentiment was in the American North, in the New England colonies, in the Middle colonies, what would later, after 1783, become the New England and the Middle States. In fact, it's after the Revolution that states like New York, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, that they passed laws abolishing slavery inside of themselves. There had never been a lot of slaves in northern states like Massachusetts and New York. I mean, there were some, definitely some, usually, just a couple in a household that were particularly well off, or they had been inherited, or what have you. But there weren't a lot of them because there weren't any big farms or anything like there were in the South. And plus, the climate was just not suitable for people who were originally from Africa. But it was never illegal in New England or the Middle Colonies to have slaves until after the Revolution. It's after the Revolution that these states passed their laws. It's after the Revolution that this abolitionist sentiment really takes root. In fact, to quote Gordon S. Wood, who is the preeminent historian alive today regarding the American Revolution and the early Republic, according to Gordon Wood, the Revolution unleashed the greatest wellspring of anti-slavery sentiment that the world had ever seen. Before the American Revolution, slavery was just a part of life. Always had been since the ancient times, since the ancient world. Egypt, Mesopotamia, China, heck, ancient Israel, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, they all had slaves. Slavery was just a part of life. Yeah, you might not particularly like it, but it was just like, it's always existed, it's always going to exist. Okay? It's just one of those things. We live in a fallen world. Sorry. It's only after the American Revolution that people start thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe this isn't such a good thing after all. Now, I should make a brief citation about that, a clarification. People had thought that slavery was wrong before the American Revolution, but it's after the American Revolution that it really gains widespread acceptance in a large area where it's like, yeah, everyone agrees, for the most part, that slavery is wrong. That's what happens. That is what happened. So Nikole Hannah Jones is completely wrong. The entire premise of the 1619 Project is wrong. Now, ignorance can be excused. If you don't know something, you don't know something. But willful ignorance is something else. And the 1619 Project was willfully ignorant. Because eminent historians in their field, so Gordon S. Wood, Revolution, Early Republic, James McPherson, Civil War, a host of others, they have come forward to say, no one from the New York Times consulted me on this project when it regarded my field of expertise. No one consulted me. And no one that I know in the field of history was consulted either. So where is the project getting its information? Where are they getting this information? In fact, 5 historians, including Gordon S. Wood and James McPherson, James Oakes was another one, I believe, they wrote a letter to the New York Times back in December where basically they were saying, look, here are some structural problems with this project, and there is absolutely no evidence for you to be making these claims. And you want to know what the New York Times did? The New York Times' editor-in-chief, a guy by the name of Jack Silverstein, wrote a public letter in answer to the historian's letter, where he basically said, we don't care. He basically dismissed all of their arguments, all of their objections with a wave of their hand. With a wave of his hand. That was it. I want to quote to you a paragraph from the World Socialist website, which, as you might have gleaned from that title, it is a website devoted to the advancement of international socialism, which is something that I do not agree with. However, kudos do have to be given because the World Socialist website is one of the only platforms of which I am aware that actually interviewed historians like Wood and McPherson to get their take on the 1619 Project, because no other publication, no other platform was actually really doing it. So many people were just accepting this with open arms once it was coming down the pipe. Oh, look, how wonderful, how wonderful. Here's a paragraph from the World Socialist website, the 1619 Project and the Falsification of History, an analysis of the New York Times' reply to 5 historians, which was published December 28th, 2019. This is what it says, quote, eradicating the distinction between historiography and journalism, The New York Times violates the professional standards and ethics of both fields. When challenged on its numerous factual errors, the paucity of its source material, and the ignoring of the scholarly literature, the Times excuses itself by arguing that its authors do not claim to be historians. But when it is pointed out that the authors have failed to present accurately, as is expected of competent journalists, the conflicting arguments in the debate over America's founding, the Times proclaims that it is writing a new history. So there you have it. There you have it. That was its defense. Besides just ignoring, basically telling these historians, yeah, your opinions don't matter. Never mind, guys. Go back to the woodwork where you came from. The Times was also playing both ends of the field here. They were saying, well, if there are historical problems with it, don't blame us. We're just journalists. And when people said, well, okay, but as journalists, you did not actually give an accurate picture by a long shot of what actually is being argued in American historiography today, they said, well, we don't have to because we're writing a new history. They wanted it both ways. Now, if you think that that's bad, let me just pause right there and say, just on the basis of that, it should not have been awarded a Pulitzer Prize. Never mind. I mean, it shouldn't have even been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. Never mind being awarded one. Because when you don't do basic research like this, that's when you really have to wonder, I mean, do you deserve an award for this? No, especially something that is as prestigious as a Pulitzer? No. The answer is hell no. Of course you don't. But we're not done yet, my friends. Oh no, because it gets even better. Because the 1619 Project didn't just sell us, because that's what they were doing. They were selling us, okay? We were the people who were supposed to read this. We were the people who were supposed to accept this. It was written for us, the rubes, okay? As well as for academia so that they could slobber all over it. But this project wasn't just made. It wasn't just made out of ignorance or willful ignorance. This project deliberately lied to us. What do I mean by that? Well, another historian, a woman by the name of Leslie Harris, who is an associate professor of history at Northwestern University, she published a piece in Politico where she said that she was actually consulted about the 1619 Project. She saw that claim in Nikole Hannah Jones' inaugural essay, and she said to them point blank, there is no evidence that would justify you making this claim. This claim is false. And the Times published it anyway, which is what really instigated Professor Harris to publish her essay saying, hey, I was consulted on this. I told them don't publish this. They still published this. And now I'm telling you that you've been lied to. For all intents and purposes, you've been lied to. It was only after that that the New York Times issued a quote-unquote clarification. They didn't even call it a correction. It was a clarification. So now, if you go to the inaugural essay, instead of it saying that a prime motivation for the colonists to rebel against England was the preservation of slavery, now it will just say that the primary motivation to rebel against England to preserve slavery was the motivation for only some of the colonists, which really still doesn't tell us diddly squat because, okay, what is some? Is it 50%? 30%? 25? 10? It also doesn't take into account that only roughly about a third of the American colonists in 1775, 1776 wanted revolution and independence in the first place. So now, some of that number, what is that? Not a clue. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Because the issue isn't the truth. The issue is not to award a piece of commentary or a piece of literature or a piece of reporting because it was hard-hitting, because it actually ferreted out the truth and now that society is better for it. No, this was done for purely ideological reasons to advance a critical theory, an intersectional identity politics theory into American history, even more so than what has already wormed its way into the field. And if you really want to know how bad it is, this is from the Washington Times. Quote, Pulitzer Prize administrator Dana Kennedy defended Tuesday the decision to honor the widely disputed 1619 Project, which reframes the American Revolution as a battle to protect slavery, even as she acknowledged that perhaps most historians would disagree with the premise. In a statement, Ms. Kennedy said the board was very proud of this selection, saying that its fresh political perspective, provocativeness of the argument, and engaging writing is what we are awarded, even though the essay's thesis was an academic outlier. The piece provoked useful public debate and conversation about an important matter, the very identity of our nation. This is what we want commentary to do, Ms. Kennedy said in an email. Yeah, fine. But don't freaking lie about it. See, this is what's happening now. This is what is happening. In fact, there are several things that are happening. I'm very sorry that this video is going to be rather long and long-winded. But like I said, this is an issue that is near and dear to my heart. So I really wanted to emphasize the fact that the 1619 Project had no business being awarded a Pulitzer, there I go again. The 1619 Project had no business being nominated for a Pulitzer, never mind actually winning one. Okay? And all this bonk about, well, it started a serious debate and about the very identity of our nation. And that's what we were awarding. No. That doesn't fly. Because the only reason why it started that debate is because it's based on a pack of lies. Lies that have now been made public. We all know that Nikole Hannah Jones was lying because of Professor Harris's piece in Politico. We know that she was lying. And yet, it doesn't matter because the truth doesn't matter anymore. Even having an honest conversation, screw that for a second. Having an honest conversation doesn't matter anymore. Because an honest conversation would not have to deal in lies. That is the main issue here. The people who stitched together this project, they knew, a lot of them knew, that they were dealing in half-truths, claims that had no historical evidence to back them up, and outright lies. And yet they still published it. They still said that this is American history. This is the conversation we should be having. And it was all based on lies. So, what are going to be the results of this? Because it's done. It has won a Pulitzer. And everyone is now wetting themselves over it. Because, oh my gosh, isn't it great? Isn't it wonderful? Oh my gosh, you should have seen Monday night just the gutless wonders on Twitter who were just bootlicking Nikole Hannah Jones and the project. You would have thought that this was the greatest thing since sliced bread. It was revolting. The degree of sycophants that were on it. But that's another story altogether. What are going to be some of the results of the 1619 Project winning a Pulitzer Prize? Well, for one thing, the Pulitzer Prize has now been weaponized. It hasn't been rendered meaningless. I wish to God that it had been rendered meaningless, because then we could shed a few tears about its passing. I mean, it was founded back at the turn of the 20th century, but we could recover from that. But it's been weaponized, which now makes it dangerous, because now the not only has the 1619 Project been given this veneer of respectability and authority, because now, not only was it published by the New York Times, but now it has a Pulitzer Prize. It's got to be serious. There's got to be truth in it. But now, the precedent has been set that whatever is ideologically pure for the cultural elite, that is what's going to win the prizes. That's what's going to win Pulitzers. from now on. It doesn't matter about the truthfulness of the subject. It doesn't matter about the honesty of the claims. It doesn't matter about the merits of the art or the beauty of it. Does it fulfill an ideological agenda? Does it further our ideology? If the answer is yes, then give it a Pulitzer and hand it out the door. What this means is that they are going to be buttressing their own worldview, because their own worldview is what's going to receive all of the cultural accolades. Kind of like, the Nobel Peace Prize. If someone wins a Nobel Peace Prize, that's a big deal. That's a huge freaking deal. So when you award it to ideologues who parrot out your line, even though they haven't done anything, we could point to a former U.S. president who exemplifies that beautifully, then what you're doing is that you are simply buttressing your ideology. That's it. And then it becomes sort of self-sustaining, because the cultural elite tell you this, and then the cultural elite give all of these prestigious awards and prizes to the works of art and to the stories and to the books and to the arguments that just simply parrot their beliefs and further their arguments, and then it just grows upon itself. It grows and grows and grows like a snowball going downhill. That's the first thing that's going to happen. The second thing is that the field of history might have been dealt a killing blow with this. I don't know. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, history and the rest of the humanities, honestly, have been wormed with critical social justice theory, intersectionality, identity politics, etc., like most fields of study have been. But this could prove to be particularly destructive to history, because think about it like this. When you have newly minted PhD graduates, right? Students of history who went all the way through. They got their BA, their master's, and now they have their doctorate in American history. PhDs, hot off the press, clutched in their eager hands. They are done with their dissertation. They've defended it. All that time, all that money, all that energy, all that suffering has paid off. And now they're filling out applications to colleges and universities for a job. The end goal, honestly, of this entire process. How much do you want to bet now that when they have interviews at these universities and colleges for an opening, that one of the questions, at the very least, is going to have to do with the 1619 Project? What are your thoughts on the 1619 Project? What do you think of the 1619 Project? And if they don't fully accept it, if they don't fully embrace it, okay, they don't even have to come out and say that it's bogus. They just have to say, well, I like it. It starts a very serious conversation, but I do kind of have a problem with this claim right here. I do have a problem with this data set over here. You can kiss that opportunity goodbye right out the window, because the university will, I guarantee you, encourage that candidate to seek employment elsewhere. Only the people who fully embrace and accept the project are actually going to get the jobs. They're the ones who are going to become the new professor, because they're the only ones who are going to be let in. Same now when professors are vying for tenure, right? The ones who accept the 1619 Project, they're the ones who are going to be put on fast track for tenure. The historians who still are in the field right now, who don't have to worry maybe about getting a job, maybe they're already on track for tenure, maybe they already have tenure, they're not going to want to say anything either, because if they say something against the project, they are going to not only be shunned by the historical community, but they are going to be declared racist, because this is the way that it works. The only reason why you could protest the 1619 Project or question the 1619 Project is because you, being a white male, feel threatened that your power base, your white privilege, is being attacked by the idea that history is being reframed to look at slavery, racism, and black Americans. That is the only reason why anyone would oppose the 1619 Project. You could laugh at that, but I have had 1 or 2 debates with people on Twitter who were deadly serious when they said this. They would say the 1619 Project is great. I would say, no, it's horribly flawed. This is what James McPherson said. This is what Gordon Wood said. These are actual historians. Well, they're just looking at it from the prism of a white man, which is just further proof of why we need the project. The very thing that disproved the project became evidence as to why we needed the project in their ideologically driven minds. Which means, now the end result of that with history is that only people who accept, embrace, and vomit out the 1619 Project, they're the ones who are going to be cramming it into the skulls, the craniums, of the next couple of generations of Americans. And because a lie becomes the truth, in one sense, if it is repeated often enough, that's what's going to happen here. Soon, it's going to become conventional wisdom. Everything that the 1619 Project says, it's going to become conventional wisdom. It's just going to be like, well, of course, it was always like that, which is going to change the entire national spirit of the United States and of Americans, because it's going to change our entire story, because it will be tilted, will be in a Dutch tilt shot, to put it kind of in movie language. But it's going to do one other thing, and I swear that this is the last point, because, this video has already gone on for 30 minutes and you want to either get it over with or go on to the next one. It's going to destroy meritocracy too, because think about this. Why would someone devote time, blood, sweat, tears, and energy into something, a piece of research, a piece of writing, a craft of any kind? Why would he put all of that into it when he knows that it's not going to do any good? That at the worst, it's actually just going to paint a target on his back and on his chest. He's not going to. He's not going to. So that means that people who actually have questions, people who have inquiries, they are going to be encouraged, silently encouraged, not to raise those questions. No, because they are going to be told that the only way that you advance is by playing the party line, the ideological line. And if you want to get ahead, that's what people will do. Because when it comes to self-preservation, people can be very, very cunning. Maybe not smart, maybe not principled, but they can be very, very cunning. So yeah, that's what the 1619 Project winning a Pulitzer Prize is going to do. I made a big deal about it when I made my video back in August. I had a very bad feeling about this because it was a blatant rewriting of history with absolutely no justification for it. And now it continues to get worse and worse. So this is something that we can't just keep our eyes on. We definitely have to fight against it. So that's why I took so long in this video to kind of explain what was going on, why it didn't deserve the prize, and the results that I think are going to happen because it won it. That is story number 1.